thank you, Talento Bilingüe, for allowing us use of your space. You know, early on in December of 2014, community and labor began a discussion on issues facing our great city. And based on mutual concerns, we understood and agreed that greater good could be achieved together. So in January of this year, we joined under Communities United for a Greater Houston and began a collaboration based on common concerns. In March, we hosted a candidate school to introduce our organizations and our issue priorities to our future leaders. Priorities include, but are not limited to, creating good and safe jobs, welcoming our city's diverse immigrant community, advocating for accountability and transparency of how public tax dollars are spent, supporting responsible contracting of public work projects, and supporting a good contract retirement for municipal employees. In April, we enlisted the research expertise of the Partnership for Working Families to give us a demographic and economic view of Houston MSA. Research showed that Houston has very low expectation for community benefits connected to public money, low standards for who is benefiting from public money, and that overall public money is used to subsidize low-wage, non-union jobs and high-end, unaffordable housing, and a far greater divide exists between the wealthier neighborhoods and the poor neighborhoods of color. Our goal is that this debate will stimulate an interest and understanding of how public policy affects our daily lives. This is a debate, an intellectual contest where candidates will put forth ideas and positions on issues with the hopes that their positions will beat the other candidates and win over our constituencies. The map right here represents our combined community presence across Houston and Harris County. Our city is diverse demographically, economically, and geographically. We represent every neighborhood, every ward, every subdivision, every section of town, and our hope is that our elected officials appreciate this presence by including all communities in a greater Houston vision. Moderating today is one of our hometown favorites. She was born and raised in Houston, Texas. She received a degree from the University of Houston in Communication Sciences and Journalism, and she also attended the University of Houston Law Center, where she received her Juris Doctor degree. Her passion is informing her community about the news. Join me in welcoming Univision's news anchor, Rebecca Suarez.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am honored to be moderating the first Community Labor City of Houston mayoral debate sponsored by Communities United for a Greater Houston. The coalition's aim is to advocate for fair, equal economic and educational opportunities in prosperous neighborhoods for working families. Representing Communities United for a Greater Houston are the following coalition members. Richard Shaw is representing Harris County AFL-CIO Council. This council represents some 50,000 union members and their families, and their goal is to bring economic and social justice to the workplace and communities. Melissa Miranda of Mi Familia Vota. Mi Familia Vota works to provide Latino immigrants a voice in our country's democratic process by developing and making available the tools necessary for immigrants to become citizens first, then voting participants. Tarsha Jackson with Texas Organizing Project. TOP is a membership-based organization where those directly impacted by the issues engage in direct action, organizing, grassroots lobbying, and electoral organizing to win change. Hamilton Gramajo of Fe y Justicia. Fe y Justicia is a membership-based organization that empowers low-income families, low-income workers through education, organizing, and strategic partnership and advocacy for community change. And Paul Puente, Houston Gulf Coast Building and Construction Trades Council. The Trades Council represents trades women and men in 23 construction unions in 20 countries and has 13 programs for women and men to earn while they learn. Please help me welcome the panel. Please give him a hand of applause. Thank you to our panelists for being here. And I will start by explaining the procedures for the debate. As moderator, my job is to keep things moving along, so I appreciate everyone honoring the time limits imposed by the format of this debate. I will introduce the candidates, and then our distinguished panelists will present questions to the candidates. And since this is a forum to answer questions, candidates cannot ask questions of panel representatives, only clarification of the question. Time will start when the candidate responds. Sitting order is the same for the opening statement. It was done by a draw of the campaigns. Opening statement will be 1 minute long. Questions will be presented to a particular candidate in rotating order. A draw determines who got the first questions. Candidates have the option to answer the question and or present rebuttal. Each candidate will have 1 minute total to respond and will not be permitted to interrupt or cut off another candidate while speaking. Closing statements will be in reverse order. Each candidate will also have 1 minute to make a closing remark. Now this is very important. Official timekeepers, they are Mr. Sammy Carolina and Ms. D. Carolina. They're here up front. At 15 seconds, the timekeeper will hold up a yellow card. A bell will ring when the time is up. If we can please hear the bell. Mr. Carolina? In the interest of time, please stop talking when you hear this bell. If you continue speaking after the bell sounds off, I will say thank you and move on to the next speaker. Now, Linda Morales is our Sergeant-in-Arms. Her role is to ensure order in the House during the debate, and I hear that she can be pretty tough. Okay, instructions for the audience. Please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent now. We request that you treat all candidates with respect. Please remain quiet throughout the debate. No clapping, cheering, calling out, or booing candidates. All applauses should be reserved for the end of the debate. No campaign literature or signs are allowed inside the room. Questions have been prepared by each organization's membership. No organization represented on the panel has endorsed in the race for the mayor. Okay, let's start with the debate. Welcome candidates. We're gonna be introducing them from left to right. We have Adrian Garcia. Adrian Garcia most recently served as Sheriff of Harris County, a former Houston City Council member, and a Mayor Pro Tem with Bill White, where he spent before that 23 years as officer with the Houston Police Department. We then have Mr. Ben Haw. Ben Haw is a husband, father, and business owner who understands the challenges Houstonians face each day and is dedicated to moving Houston forward as the city's next mayor. We then have Mr. Bill King, the son of a union pipe fitter and a U of H alum. Bill King has earned success as a businessman, attorney, elected official, newspaper columnist, and community leader. He is ready to put that experience to work for all Houston neighborhoods, starting with fixing the streets, catching the crooks, and balancing the budget. Mr. Marty McVeigh. Marty McVeigh is a son of a former police officer, national and international business leader, public servant as a presidential appointee, and lover of all things Houston. Mr. Steve Costello. Steve Costello is a father, grandfather, and has served on City Council since 2010, representing the entire city of Houston. We then have Mr. Chris Bell. Chris Bell was elected to City Council in 1997. He served 3 consecutive terms and was elected to Congress in 2002, representing the former 25th Congressional District as a strong supporter of labor and workers' rights issues. And then we have Mr. Sylvester Turner. State Representative Sylvester Turner went from sharing 1 bedroom with 8 brothers and sisters to attending the University of Houston and Harvard Law School, founding a successful small business and becoming a champion in our legislature for strong schools, quality health, and affordable electricity rates for seniors. Please give him a round of applause. Let's begin with opening statements. You have 1 minute for opening statements. We will start with Mr. Garcia.
Thank you very much. And in this corner, no. It's my honor to be here. My name is Adrian Garcia, and I'm asking for your permission to be your mayor. And I want to thank all the organizations responsible for organizing today's event. I've led, managed, and reformed a major organization. Nearly 5,000 employees, an operating budget of nearly $500 million. And during the course of my administration, I was able to save $200 million of our money. But during the course of my administration, I was able to do all those things while still keeping you, your families, and our streets safe across Harris County, Texas. But also during the course of my administration, I dealt with a tough recession. I think some of you remember that. And I'm so proud that while Harris County across the board was laying off hundreds of employees, I never did it. I didn't think it was fair to try to balance the budget on the backs of hardworking people who are just trying to serve our community. So I'm honored to be here. I am the only retired city employee at this panel, and look forward to serving you. Adrian Garcia.
I'm going to try and talk quickly because I don't want to hear the bell. It is an honor to be here this morning. As a former city attorney for the city of Houston, I had the opportunity to fight on behalf of city employees. I recall that one of my first tasks was when firefighters were working overtime and not getting paid for it. I was a lawyer who actually resolved that in favor of the firefighters. I remember when police officers, the Police Officers Union, was disallowing minorities to participate aggressively in terms of promotions. I'm the city attorney who actually resolved that in favor of more diversity among the police force. I am committed to the rights of labor and the rights of people to lead government. We, the people, formed government. Government did not form the people. I'm Ben Hall.
Good morning. My name is Bill King. Thank you all for coming this morning. I hope that y'all won't mind that I dress more casually than the other candidates this morning. My grandfather, who was actually a union carpenter, had a saying that he only wore neckties for matches, hatches, and dispatches. And I inherited a few of those genes, I guess, and I just couldn't quite bring myself to put a suit on again on a Saturday morning. I grew up down in Clear Lake. My dad was a charter member of Pipefitter Local 211. I worked my way through the University of Houston, primarily working as an apprentice for the pipe fitters in the Texas City plant, so I think I understand something about the problems and issues that working class families face. I'm running for mayor because I don't think the city is providing the basic needs and services that a city is supposed to provide. I'm worried about our infrastructure. Go out here and look at the streets. I'm worried about crimes. Murder is up 46% so far this year. And of course the city's finances are a mess in the biggest oil and gas boom in our lifetime. We've got to get the city back to basics.
Good morning. My name is Marty McVeigh. I'm a business leader here in Houston. And I changed my opening remarks today because I spoke with my dad last night, and I told him that I was coming here today and to talk with union groups. And he reminded me that my grandfather was a Teamster in a time when he couldn't find a job, a time when wages were not protected. And it was the Teamsters that kept food on our table, on my father's table. And how appreciative I am. And my father reminded me that he wouldn't be able to be where he is today. He's a retired judge. Before that, he's a retired police officer. So without the Teamsters, I wouldn't be sitting on this stage today. And I've been on both sides of many issues that concern labor unions. And I'm deeply appreciative to all unions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Costello. I'm a civil engineer who co-founded an engineering company in 1991 and helped grow to its success it is today. I'm proud to say that the firm has been recognized 5 times by the Houston Business Journal as the best place to work in Houston. And that's actually based on a blind employee survey of at least 85% of the employees. That's a direct reflection of how I manage my firm and how I manage the people that work with us. I'm also an at-large council member, and for the last 5 years I've worked to prevent wasteful spending. I've advocated for a more responsible way to fund streets, drainage, and traffic improvements. And I continue to work on pension reform because I believe local control is what's required, that Houstonians should have the responsibility, and not the politicians in Austin, to figure out and solve our financial crisis that's facing us. I'm here today to respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Chris Bell, and every time you hear that ringing sound this morning, I hope you will consider it an endorsement of my campaign for mayor. As a former member of the United States Congress and a former member of the Houston City Council, I decided to get back in the political arena because I believe we're perfectly positioned to move to the next level, to not only be the fourth largest city, but to actually start acting like the fourth largest city and to become one of the most modern cities in the entire country. Of course, that means a willingness to embrace the amazing advancements in technology, but it's not all about technology. Modern cities find ways to lift up their citizens. I've always been a friend to working men and women, and if I'm fortunate enough to be elected your next mayor, nothing about that is ever going to change. We face tremendous economic disparity here in the city of Houston. We are going to have to find a way to address it, and I'm glad we have a chance to discuss it here this morning. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and I don't want the bell to go off. I don't want any endorsements. Let me just say that I was born and reared in Acres Home and still live in Acres Home community. 9 kids in a 2-bedroom home. My mom worked as a maid at the Rice Hotel for many years. My dad worked at Continental Emsco as a painter and was a yard man on the weekend. I took the bus from the north side to University of Houston, and that's pretty much in the end how I made it through University of Houston on my way to law school. There are still too many blue tops on too many people's homes. 24% of our people are living in poverty in this city. 29% of them can't access health care. Income inequality is growing. In a city where there are cranes and development, in the shadows of that, there are still people who are trying to find a way to make a living. My record speaks to that, and I look forward to participating in this forum this morning.
We now move on to the question and answer portion of our debate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Our first question comes from Richard Shaw to Mr. Costello.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'll just use my old teacher voice. Good morning. There we go. On behalf of Communities United for a Greater Houston, I want to welcome you all here, and I want to thank you for appearing before us. The only advice I can give is what we did on one of our slides at the Candidates Academy, which was tell us the truth. First question, would you support the payment of living wages and benefits, community employment and training as a requirement for all city contractors, including TERSs, tax abatements, or other similar projects?
I'll use my teacher's voice. Okay. Actually, most city jobs, in fact, all city jobs that are funded through tax-supported bases are required to use Davis-Bacon wage rates, which are livable wages. And that includes TERS activities because they have to follow city regulations. But I want to talk about really job training because the biggest problem we're having with the city of Houston right now is workforce development. So this past year, I advocated for funding to Capital Idea, which is an organization that is training people to come up out of what we would call not livable wages, train them and help them to get livable wages projects and jobs. And it's really an incredible program that I help support. I also voted for the job training that we're doing at the airport system in collaboration with HCC and Lone Star College for training for construction-related projects that we're going to be doing at the airport. Thank you.
My response to this question would be absolutely. We are going to have to find ways for more people to be paid a livable wage in the city of Houston, and the city must lead by example always. If we don't address this issue, we're going to continue to have a city of haves versus have-nots. And we've already talked a little bit about the economic disparity. I think it goes a little bit beyond 24%. If you look at some maps and some studies that have been done, it looks like it's closer to 40 to 50% of citizens here in Houston are living below the poverty line. That is simply unacceptable in a modern city, and it's going to be addressed if I'm fortunate enough to be elected mayor.
And my answer is yes as well. I think we have to encourage that. We're going to be the next mayor, so we'll have to encourage it, and I certainly would do that. I think that's critically important. When you start talking about affordable housing, for example, people can't buy houses if they don't have the income. The income inequality in this city is growing. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many people in this city who are doing extremely well. And you can see that when you look at the cranes and the development. But in the shadows of that growth and prosperity, there are many people who are working, but they're working poor. And they can't provide the insurance that they need. All of those policies have to be integrated within what the city does in its contracting. You have to even out that disparity that exists. And when that happens, I believe it becomes a win-win. What I would like to see happen, if I'm elected as mayor, is convene labor and business together. Let's sit down collectively to see how we can better design a city that works for all groups. We need businesses to come into the city. We want them to stay. We want 4,500, but we got to work together to get that.
We will continue on this end.
Thank you very much. And yes, I am in strong support of making sure that any public dollar that goes out and is resulting in a project, infrastructure, or otherwise, must include prevailing wages and Davis-Bacon, and must make sure that we are respecting the people that we're asking to perform that work. But it also requires the city and the mayor to make sure that as we're writing the requirements in respective contracts, and we're issuing those dollars and creating those business relationships, that we do the work up front. Too often, when I was on council, labor had to come to City Hall to fight for something that shouldn't have happened to begin with. And so I want to make sure, and I will work hard to work with labor to make sure that we're all at the table up front, making sure that those projects are being started with the workers in mind from the very beginning.
It's tragic, Richard, that this question even has to be asked. The working poor is not an option in the city of Houston. Guaranteeing living wages, Davis-Bacon rights to its city employees and to contractors, anyone working in the city of Houston, no mayoral candidate deserves to be elected unless they support living wages for workers in Houston, Texas. As your mayor, I commit 100% commitment to this pledge.
Well, I support the current contractual requirements for a living wage and insurance and the other things that are in the current city contracts. I think the question is as to enforcement, because what I hear is even though that's in the contracts, that is frequently not enforced. So I want to make sure that the requirements we have in the contracts are enforced. I'm not in favor of the city getting into the training business. That is the purview and scope of the ISDs and the community colleges. One of my mentors used to say, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And one of the problems with the city of Houston is trying to do everything right now and not the basic core services we expect a city to provide.
The answer to the question is yes. And the way to do that is to grow our economy in a smart way. We can't continue to just stagnate. We always need to be looking to the future and how we bring new jobs to the city of Houston. We need to diversify our industrial portfolio. We need good manufacturing here in Houston. We need good technology jobs here in Houston. And how does that happen? We need an economic development office here in the city of Houston that reports to the mayor, that is led by the mayor. That will guarantee good jobs. That will guarantee our future.
Our second question comes from Melissa Miranda to Mr. Chris Bell.
Our city of Houston, under Mayor Parker, became a part of the coalition Cities United for Immigration Action. This coalition of city governments has made it its priority to collectively shape the national debate, work together on implementation, urge Congress to pass immigration reform, and engage local stakeholders' efforts. As Mayor of Houston, how will you keep Houston actively committed to the mission of Cities United for Immigration Action and to comprehensive immigration reform?
This is obviously an extremely important issue for the city of Houston. We need comprehensive immigration reform, and I think we're here in Houston, we are perfectly positioned to be a leader in this debate, both by our efforts and our presence in Washington, D.C., but also working with the Greater Houston Partnership. About 8 years ago, the partnership began an effort to try to impact the immigration reform debate. Fundraising for that effort fell woefully short. I think that effort needs to be renewed, and I think as mayor I would want to get fully behind that effort to make sure that it was fully funded and we could do everything possible to move the issue forward in Washington, D.C. It cannot be allowed to simply stagnate any longer because it has a dramatic impact on our economy.
The city of Houston is the most diverse city in the country. We do need a comprehensive immigration policy, but the city of Houston also has a lobby team, both on the national level as well as on the state level. We need to make sure that we utilize them to the fullest extent possible in pushing for comprehensive immigration reform. And then on the state level, I have been supportive of efforts on the state level, for example, for driving licenses on the state level. Then there have been ID cards, if not for the driver's license. Those efforts have yet to be successful, but the city of Houston can take an active role even on the state level. When it comes to, for example, laws that are trying to get rid of sanctuary cities, I've been opposed to it. There have been efforts dealing with E-Verify. We have to. I've been very skeptical and opposed to that as well. The point is, we have a diverse city, but diversity means also that it needs to be a welcoming city. You want people to come to this city. You want to utilize people's gifts, their talents, their resources, and I think together, collectively, we can achieve that and we can get there.
I agree. I think that that we must continue in the mayor, and given your permission to serve you as your mayor, I will continue the advocacy that I have already been doing. And I've been doing it for quite some time, not only as the sheriff most recently, but I did it as a council member, and I did it as a police officer. Comprehensive immigration reform and saying that we support it cannot go without making sure that we emphasize that it must come with the opportunity to achieve citizenship. And making sure that we continue to create those partnerships, bringing those business leaders like Stan Merrick and Norman Adams and others to the table who can provide a balanced conversation and argument that comprehensive immigration reform is critical. And using the pulpit of the mayor's office to corral others across the country and go to Congress and argue that this is something that will pull families out of the shadow, be great for our economy, and be good for public safety. Thank you.
Let me tell you a little bit about what I've already done in the private sector on the issue of immigration reform. I'm the lawyer who brought the cases against Shipley along with another female lawyer because they were using undocumented workers and not paying them anything to do the work. I'm the lawyer who brought the case against a Houston police officer who was violently raping undocumented ladies on Alameda Genoa. I'm the lawyer who actually brought the lawsuit because a little undocumented boy was being sodomized by a school teacher in HISD. I've already stood up and fought for the rights of all individuals to be protected under our Constitution. As your mayor, I commit to make sure that we here locally can pass our own resolutions, our own ordinances, our own statements of fair treatment of immigrants. And thank God for the healthy diversity that we have in this city. It is our strength.
Well, for those of you who are readers of my column in the Chronicle, you know that I've been a very passionate voice for comprehensive immigration reform. I came to that conclusion, frankly, as a matter of faith. I was sitting in church one Sunday, and our pastor read a scripture portion out of Jeremiah 22nd chapter where it talks about how you're supposed to treat those aliens living in your land. And it turns out that's only one of about 40 or 50 scriptures that give similar admonishments. And I have a hard time understanding how many of my fellow conservative Christians can have the views that they do on immigration, and I've taken them to task on that in my column in the past. And as mayor, I would continue to be a strong advocate for immigration reform.
Thank you. I appreciate this question, and you know, when you think about really what the question is, we're having these discussions because the federal government has failed you. I'm not going to be the mayor that fails you because the federal government failed. I do support sanctuary cities. I do support prevailing wages. I do support that anybody that comes to this city for opportunity, that they should have a right to have opportunity. Regardless of where you're from or how you got here, you are a Houstonian. And I will fight for your rights to have fair wages. I'll fight for your rights to have opportunity right here in Houston. One failure of government shouldn't equal another failure of government.
The term sanctuary city, sometimes it's actually a detrimental term that we're accused of. And Houston is not really a sanctuary city, it's a welcoming city. As an elected official, I'm proud as I leave the city and talk about this great city of Houston and say that we're a majority of minorities. And we're the only city to say that. And there has been studies by even Dr. Kleinberg that says that we are the model city for what the nation is going to be in 25 years. I think that's pretty incredible. Again, obviously we're all going to support comprehensive immigration reform, everyone that's sitting up there. But what we have to face is the fact that the federal government, and even sometimes the state government, gives unfunded mandates down to local municipalities. And those are the challenges that we're going to have to overcome. But again, as I said earlier, Houston is a welcoming city, and we're proud of that. Thank you.
Ms. Tarsha Jackson with the top has the following question for Mr. Sylvester Turner.
As the mayor, how would you increase access to health care within our communities?
Well, you certainly want the private sector to be in a position to do well enough to provide livable wages that we talked about earlier, as well as health insurance. That's critically important. But at the same time, you also, well, for 26 years that I've been in the legislature, I've fought for access to health care. It was House Bill, I think, 109. On the CHIP program, expanding the CHIP program. And many people thought Republicans wouldn't even vote for it. At the end of the day, in the Texas House, 64 Democrats, 62 Republicans voted for it to expand CHIP. A lot of kids have benefited from that. It is poor policy for the state of Texas, for example, not to be a part of ACA and not to have expanded Medicaid. Crazy, it makes no sense. We need to work to change that around. And then even locally, Ben Taub is at risk of losing its level 1 trauma status. There's a bill through the appropriation process. I've worked to provide more money to trauma centers. That money will be seen by Ben Taub in September 1st of this year. So we have to hit it on all levels, the private sector, the governmental sector, the state arena to provide access.
What I would do is continue, as you know, as a sheriff, I was staunchly arguing that Texas cannot continue to rank 49th in the nation in per capita spending on mental health care. And obviously that affects us here locally, and so I will continue my advocacy to bring more dollars. You know, the mayor can be arguing in Washington, D.C., making sure that in spite of our state's attitude towards the Affordable Care Act, that we need to pull down and find ways to draw down more affordable care dollars so that we can support our families. You know, when I was on city council, one of the issues that was brought to my attention was that the immunization rates amongst Latino children in my district was amongst the lowest. So I created the Near Northside Healthy Community Partnership to increase immunization rates, and we accomplished that. And so I will continue to make sure that our children grow up healthy so that they can be happy and so they can be productive and be great citizens in our future. Thank you.
Tarsha, thank you for your question. I address it at two levels. One is access to health care. The other is the ability to pay for it once you have access. Both of those are struggles that the next mayor will have to deal with. I'm in favor, in terms of the issue of access, of combining governmental efforts on this issue. Right now, we have different governmental entities that want to handle healthcare concerns without cooperation with other governmental entities. Just imagine the strength we would have if we were to join our collective energies and resources. And on the question of affordability, I believe that healthcare should start in elementary school. I'm one of those who in elementary school did not have healthcare. And as a result, throughout my first formative years, I lost most of my teeth. No one should have to suffer that plight in Houston, Texas, and as your mayor, I commit on both fronts, funding and access.
I think there's two tools that the mayor has that can actually do something about access to health care. The first is working with the FQHCs, the Federal Qualified Health Clinics. You know, we don't have nearly as many of these as other cities do. I've worked specifically with El Centro de Corazon and helping them raise money on several occasions, and these are great tools for our uninsured population. So as mayor, I would work to increase the number and the size of those organizations and their funding. The second thing is I think we need to look seriously at the City of Houston health clinics and the job they're doing and whether or not it makes sense to try to combine those efforts with the county so that we have one level of government or a combined level of government that people can go to for those kind of services. I suspect there's a fair amount of waste and inefficiency, not sharing medical records and those kind of things between the clinics and the Harris County Health District.
Well, thank you. I'm the only one on the stage that I believe that has any healthcare experience. I've invested in healthcare businesses over the years, and quite frankly, the problem with lack of access to healthcare is we don't have the money from the federal government. We need to go get our money from the feds. Our good friends in Austin keep stopping money, hundreds of millions of dollars, from coming right here to Harris County. Providers cannot continue to provide, hospitals, physicians, they can't continue to provide access to health care if they're not getting paid. So we have to look for carve-outs with the federal government, where the top 10 cities in the United States should not have to have one man in Austin stopping the flow of money to our city. We're a major city in the United States. We need direct funding from Washington to Houston.
My wife and I have this discussion quite often. She currently works for Legacy Community Health Service Centers. My wife of 40 years is sitting here in the audience, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that, because we talk a lot about health care. You know, the city of Houston provides health care to their employees, but one of the issues that we don't provide health care to is, you know, in the construction industry. And so we set up a program several years ago, which is called Pay or Play. And that's to level the playing field between responsible contractors that provide healthcare services to their employees versus the ones who don't. And in that fund, the ones who don't actually pay into the system. The problem is that the city has not been using those dollars to get it back to the employees of the companies that are paying into the system. My position is that we need to reallocate those monies back to those companies to make sure those employees get proper health care. Thank you.
Because of the passage of the Affordable Care Act, information has become power, and I think the City of Houston can certainly be very active in providing that information for citizens. Obviously, we're decreasing the number of uninsured, but the more people who have access to information and know how to sign up, the better. And we have a vast library system, we have multi-service centers, we have a health department that can all aid in that effort. I also agree we need to increase the number of federally qualified health centers. I've worked on that issue as a member of Congress, and that has improved, but we're not where we need to be. And I want to go one step further. I think we also need to address dental care. A few years ago, I asked an expert in education if they could change anything about our educational system, what would it be? And she said, access to dental care. Imagine trying to go to school all day if your teeth hurt. I'd like to work with dental care providers to see if we can develop some kind of system to improve access.
Question number 4 goes to Mr. Adrian Garcia from Hamilton Gramajo.
The city of Houston has million-dollar contracts with construction companies that have been cited by OSHA for serious safety violations. According to the Office of Business Opportunities, they just imposed a fine on these violators without reporting the companies to the Inspector General Office to enforce the wage theft ordinance. What policies would you put in place to ensure city contracts are only awarded to companies that comply fully with OSHA regulations and pay prevailing wages?
Very good question, and this is an issue that has been plaguing our city for a very long time. I'm very proud of those who worked to create the anti-wage theft ordinance. When you have these issues being identified, they must be enforced, and companies must learn and realize that there's consequences for being non-compliant. And so I look forward to working with the Office of Inspector General, making sure that they know that I will not tolerate families being disrespected, being taken advantage of, and that people realize that when everybody works together, when we become one Houston, when labor comes together to help certification and training be much more stronger, it ultimately benefits our economy. The projects are done right the first time, they last longer, people are safer, and it benefits the economy overall, as I said. And so I will make sure that they're enforced and that companies realize that there's consequences for being non-compliant.
Hamilton, thank you for your question. And let me first of all say, when a contractor submits a bid based upon a certain wage calculation, and then after being awarded the contract changes and steals the wages away from the employees and pockets that money, that's theft of city funds. And as your mayor, I would enforce the law against that contractor because they are depriving the city of the benefits that were contracted to be awarded. Now, I have to go back to Marty's comment about the issue of health care. And Marty, I'd like to point out that I do applaud your involvement in the marketplace, but the fact of the matter is there's other experience on the panel with regard to health insurance. I happen to be involved in one of the largest pieces of litigation right now to ensure that private citizens are getting the insurance benefits that Aetna Insurance Company has promised to bestow upon them. So I applaud your involvement, but there's also other involvement.
Well, I certainly go to the doctor a lot more than I used to. I'm not sure if that qualifies as being involved in health care or not. There's really two questions here. One is is wage theft, and if any contractor steals wages, they ought to be fired and never allowed to do business with the city again. Period. End of story. That's an easy one. The OSHA stuff is a little different. I've been in a small business and I've dealt with OSHA before. And there are some things that are serious violations and there are some things that are less serious violations. And so I think that has to really be judged on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, contractors need to comply with OSHA regulations regardless of what we think about the reasonableness of them. But in terms of what kind of sanctions I would apply against them as mayor, it would depend on how seriously I think they really implicate worker safety.
Well, I think this is it's a wage safety issue, it's a contract issue, and it's enforcement. I agree with my friend to the right here, who's always to the right of me, that they need to be fired. And that's the end of the story. You don't, it's a breach of contract. You don't protect the people that work for you. You don't protect the city. Then that's the end of it. They're fired, and they're not going to be able to do business with the city in the future. And you know, it's the city needs to get what it pays for. The people that own this city need to get what they pay for, and the people that are doing the jobs need to get what is entitled to them.
The question does address two issues. One is safety on the job, and the other is wage theft. Talk a little bit about safety. The city has numerous construction inspectors that are responsible to make sure the project is safe for the employees that are working there. Since they represent the owner of the city, they have the ability to shut a job down. We need to make sure that our inspectors are fully trained in those construction activities. The other problem is relative to wage theft. It's not really the prime contractor that is the issue here. It's the sub, and it's the sub to the sub, where the information is not readily available unless that employee is able to give it to us, or what we call complaint driven. And a lot of times those employees might not know that they have that ability to reach out to us. So those are the issues. The other has to do with the fact that we go to best value rather than going to low bidding contracts, so that we can address companies that have poor safety records and wage theft issues.
I see this as a question of consequences. If companies engage in this type of conduct, what's going to happen to them, and how are you going to make sure that there are consequences? And if that is not being done, it's going to be done. I think the city of Houston has been successful in the past of setting up mechanisms to punish certain types of conduct and making sure that if folks engage in a certain type of conduct, they're therefore disqualified from participating in city business. And if that's not happening in regard to these types of violations, it needs to be. And I think that the best way to ensure that these types of things don't happen is by doing something I did when I was a member of Congress, by having a labor liaison on staff, someone who's responsible for bulldogging these issues and bringing them to the attention of the mayor in this instance so that they can be addressed. And that will be something that will happen in my administration.
I think it's important you want responsible contractors and you want responsible contracting. That's critically important. And then you want the message to be made loud and clear that you want even enforcement. You want uniformity. You don't want certain people to be able to contract with the city and they are following the rules, and then others are contracting with the city and they're abusing the rules. You want to make sure that when it comes to wage theft, when it comes to misclassification of employees, when it comes to safety, that those rules will apply to all evenly. What businesses want, they want certainty. And they want to make sure that they're going to be treated the same. And if that's the message, I think you're going to see people start acting much better in the entire process. And then you simply want to make sure that you utilize all the resources that the city has to bear, not only within this department, but with the city attorneys, to make sure that those rules are applied evenly in our RFP process.
Our next question comes from Mr. Paul Puente to Mr. Ben Hall.
Good morning. How can you, as an elected official, ensure that the city hire responsible contractors in construction that use apprentice training programs?
Thank you, Paul, for the question. And this ties into an omission, I think, that's occurring in Houston right now. And that is the disappearance of vocational training, both at HISD and in our community colleges. Everybody does not want to be a brain surgeon. Everybody doesn't want to be a lawyer. Everybody doesn't want to be a certain profession. But there are certain people that do want to do vocational services. And we right now do not have a training program in place. I believe the mayor and the city, by awarding contracts, will provide greater opportunity for those who are interested in vocational training and learning a craft. As your mayor, I am committed to making sure that that would be a criteria for awarding contracts to contractors if they have an apprentice training program.
Well, as I mentioned in my open, I've actually been in an apprentice program before with pipe fitters. And actually my dad ran that program for pipe fitters for a number of years. And I saw the benefit of that and the opportunity that it gave. Now, in my particular case, it convinced me to go into law school, not be a pipe fitter, because it was working out there in the hot sun every day. It seemed like that good a deal to me. But I think apprentice programs are incredibly important. And as mayor, I would work to try to see that our contractors have those in place.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. How about hiring more unions to do the work? How about enforcing the contracts that exist inside the city of Houston? The question number 4 that was posed to us, it's an enforcement issue. If we want to regulate how the city does business and promotes good quality work for the city of Houston, how about enforce it? I can't think of a better way to ensure that than to make sure that we're hiring unions, that we're holding people accountable, that the city does not look over any misappropriation of funds, that it doesn't look over any of the issues that violate people's safety in doing work for the city of Houston.
You know, there was an earlier comment from Mr. King that the city shouldn't be in the business of job training. I don't agree with that. Yes, we don't train people, but we should have an environment to allow for the training to occur, and that's exactly what we're doing now at the airport, providing a facility and working closely with HISD, working also with Houston Community College and Lone Star to set up a training program in construction so people that live around the airport can work in the airport. The biggest challenge that we have moving forward has to do with best value versus low bid. And several years ago, the state changed laws to allow municipalities now to, when they advertise for construction projects, to allow the city to decide whether or not it's going to pick a best value company versus automatically low bid. And usually best value companies are ones that provide good benefits to their employees, livable wages, and they're trained employees.
If we can find some way to assure that not everyone who goes through an apprentice program turns out with the same political beliefs as Bill King, I would be much more supportive of apprentice program. No, I think apprentice programs are fantastic, and I do think they should be part of the criteria for city contracting. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning about economic disparity here in the city of Houston. We have to look for a way to, all the ways that we possibly can, to lift people up. And this is one program that has proven highly successful. Not everyone is going to go to college, but this is a great way to learn a trade where you can be paid a livable wage and live a very high quality of life. And so the city of Houston needs to be doing everything to support it.
Apprentice programs are part of the strategy of building that road to the future. If you want to provide additional capacity, for example, a lot of these contracting opportunities, you have to start people early. If you want to deal with people who are unemployed, or people who do not have basic skills, apprentice programs are a key vehicle in getting those people into the job market. But it can't just be done specifically just with the city. The city of Houston has to work in collaboration with Lone Star, with Houston Community College, and even with TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation. They have an apprentice program, and we need to utilize their resources. A part of the RFP process, when we're encouraging companies to come and we want them to participate with the city, we also have to encourage them to have these apprentice programs. That is the best way, one of the best tools of getting people who want to work, looking for work, but don't have the basic skills, to move them from point A to point B. And it has to be a part of the dialogue and the message that the next mayor will give in the city.
Paul, this is a great question. And first of all, I would just say, I would work with you. I would invite your organization to be the principal point on apprenticeship development programs. You know, when Houston has a program like Hire Houston First, we have to make sure that the city also says hire Houstonians first, and making sure that they're prepared to do the work by making sure that there's a pathway to the apprenticeship programs that Labor and Paul's organization in particular is phenomenal for. I mean, they're already the leaders in it, so I would encourage a strong partnership. And similarly, going back to the previous question about compliance, you know, as a sheriff, there was a concern that I heard from the community about folks not wanting to come into the sheriff's office to file a complaint. I empowered LULAC and NAACP to take complaints on my behalf and bring them to my office, and I would work with Labor to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now start our second round of questions. Mr. Richard Shaw has our first question to Bill King.
Mr. King, are you in favor of funding and maintaining the defined pension plan for the City of Houston municipal employees? Thank you.
So, is there a word left out of that? You said defined pension. Is that defined benefit or defined contribution?
Defined pension plan.
Well, I think we ought to have a pension plan for sure. I think everybody knows I'm not in favor of defined benefit plans, and for a couple of reasons. The first is that we know in the public sector, defined benefit plans create the temptation for elected officials to promise benefit to workers on one hand and then not ask the taxpayers to fund them on the other hand. And so as a result, these plans will never be funded. We know they're not because they're not funded any place around the country. Just in the last 5 years, our plans have gone another $1 billion unfunded just in the last 5 years. It is an impossible temptation for elected officials to resist. The second problem is the cost of these plans. Last year, the expenses of maintaining the 3 defined benefit plans that we had was $60 million. Now, we only missed funding those by about 150 or so. We could have made up a third of that just for the cost of these plans. It went to Wall Street bankers, to lawyers, actuaries, lobbyists.
Thank you.
The answer to the question for me is yes. I do support that. I do support collective bargaining. As I stated earlier, you know, without the help of the unions, my family would have a much harder time. Unions are not the problems. Pensions are not the problems. It's how we address our own financial problems. We can, through management, we can work out almost any financial problem. I don't see that, you know, having the pensions be an issue. That's a promise. It's a promise that we make to the people of this city to say, work for us, do something good for us. We need to own up to our promise. We need to look for ways to get our way out of it financially, and that's just through good management.
I don't fault the members in the system, I fault the structure of the system. A defined benefit plan is an affordable plan. However, the simple fact that it's regulated by the state and not regulated locally with local control is a significant problem. And that's the issue that we're facing today. We had an affordable plan in 2001, and unfortunately, due to a number of changes to the benefit plan, it's unaffordable right now. I'm proposing to make some recommended reforms to those plans to ensure, number one, that it's fully funded, guarantee that we can make those payments, and guarantee that the recipients will have a guaranteed pension moving forward. And the issue here has to do with the fact that all we have to do is make 2 minor changes to the plan. It's not a global revision and going to a defined contribution plan. It's a simple minor change. And it won't affect the new employees that are already coming into the system. It has to affect the legacy members.
My answer to the question is yes, I support defined benefit pension plans, and I think what's being left out of this debate is why do we have defined benefit pension plans? What's the public policy behind them? Well, the public policy behind them is that we make a bargain with those who dedicate the majority of their adult lives to the city of Houston, either in the police department or fire department or as municipal employees. And we say that you probably aren't going to get extremely wealthy or rich at working for the city, but if you dedicate a large part of your adult life to the city of Houston, then we'll make sure you have a comfortable retirement. I think that's a fair bargain. Did it get out of control? Is it sustainable as it presently is with the firefighters? No. And we're going to have to address it. But it's also disingenuous to sit up here and try to lead people to believe that as mayor you're going to be able to cram a solution down the throats of the firefighters. You can't. You're going to have to negotiate, and I will.
And the answer to the question is yes. Let me just say that with respect to defined benefit, but defined benefit plan works. With the ERS, the Employment Retirement System, just in this legislative session, myself and 2 others have put forth a plan that's been accepted by the employees that will make that plan actuarially sound. That is a defined benefit plan. Even within the defined benefit plans, employees within the city of Houston, municipal workers, HP and HPO in particular, for example, they have changed their eligibility, age, they're contributing more. The firefighters' pension plan is 91% sound. Even if you shift to a defined contribution plan, the studies say it will cost more, and it does not relieve the unfunded liability. What is missing in this conversation is not just the benefits to the employees, but governments like the city of Houston have consistently underfunded their contribution, have not made their payments, and now want to blame the employees. I think all of the elements need to be put at the table at the same time.
Thank you.
Richard, or I think that was your question, Richard. It is a good question, and the answer is yes. There's nothing wrong with a defined benefit plan, but without local control to do the things that local communities have to do on a time, on an occasional basis when the economy doesn't do what you wanted to do, you have to have the ability to negotiate. And right now we don't have that opportunity. And I, as a retiree, as I mentioned earlier, I never want to get a check, and I don't want any other retiree to get their pension check with a note saying, please do not deposit for another 90 days. We can't have that happen. And so the only way to get there is make sure that we're asking to be your mayor. Well, I'd like to be able to be the mayor of One Houston, and to be able to negotiate and make those decisions for One Houston right here in Houston, not have to deal with Austin. And so what's important to this question is making sure that we achieve local control.
Let me start by saying we're talking about a false choice. Right now, the city has unfunded, unpaid liabilities on pension of $3.68 billion. Whether you have local control or Austin control, you have to find some money to fund that. We don't have it. So here, Bill King and I are closer to one another on the issue of the defined pension plan. Let me say, though, the choice is false. We can have defined benefit pension plan if we tie it to market risk. Right now, what's missing in the equation is we are not tying market risk, that is the fluctuation of the marketplace, to the benefits that are actually being paid to pensionees. As your mayor, I will aggressively seek to honor all past promises and reform defined benefit plan for future employees.
Ms. Melissa Miranda has the following question for Mr. McVeigh.
What specific policies or administrative practices would you initiate in order to improve the local processes of voter registration and voting for all Houstonians, but particularly for those constituencies traditionally underrepresented at the polls?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the previous question first. And, you know, I've heard a lot of talk about negotiations, and I would just want to make it very clear that it is not fair to our firefighters, to our police officers, to our city workers to say that our economy is bad, the city can't balance its budget, so therefore we're going to negotiate with you. We need to negotiate in the forward. We need to find a way, and I think the fastest way is to bond out the pension liabilities to the city of Houston, pay the debt, and move on, and negotiate in the future with our employees. The answer to this question is, how about giving the people something to vote for? How about initiating a plan for the city of Houston that brings economic development here, that brings good jobs, that brings good stability for our region?
So someone once told me an interesting statistic that I talk a lot about while I'm out throughout the city. In 2011, the city's election cycle, there were 1.2 million eligible voters. Average age was 32 years old. The actual number of people that voted was less than 15%. Average age was 62. This is not an ethnic issue. This is across all age groups, all ethnicities. What we need to do is, as elected officials, we need to continue to go out to the communities and encourage them to vote and tell them that their vote actually counts. I do remember when Debbie and I were raising our family, we were primarily focused on our careers, getting into a house, raising our children. But it doesn't take a lot of time to get involved in politics, to get to understand that, especially on the local level, we affect your life more than anybody else does. And I continue to encourage people to go vote.
Well, our voting system is obviously antiquated. There's only so much the city can do. Much more of it needs to be happening online. New generations and younger generations of individuals live their lives online. They would probably be far more likely to sign up in this digital age if they could do so online, even if they could vote online. And I think that's something that our society needs to address. As far as the city is concerned, you can certainly provide access to information and voter registration cards through various city departments, and I think that we should be doing that. But also, I remember walking on the north side when I was running for city council years ago, and a Latino woman told me that, why should I care? They don't do anything over here. And so if we start having more equal distribution of projects and people really do see progress, they're more likely to get involved.
It's important. You have to speak to people on the issues that matter to them, to their households, to their day-to-day living. I think people are looking for people who will speak to their causes and to their issues. People are looking for folk who will champion them. If you give them that, if you are authentic, then I think people will register, they will be educated, and I think they will participate. But I do want to go back to the pension issue. Let me just say, for those who talk about local control, the state legislature has made no change to the pension system of the city of Houston since 1993 without the people, the mayor, city council, and the stakeholders coming to Austin and asking for those changes. We have not, the legislature didn't impose changes on the city of Houston. Secondly, the unfunded pension issue didn't just originate overnight. It didn't originate in this election. It has always been there. And for those who are talking about pensions, where were they 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago? You cannot balance the city's books on the backs of labor. And I think we need to be very careful when we address this issue.
Well, when you try to get folks to come to the polls, they do have to recognize that change does happen. When I was on council, there was a looming issue, and I worked with some folks in this room on the issue of affordable housing. And we accomplished that, made an incredible investment in the near north side, in an area that was starting to experience gentrification. And people remember that. And so when it comes down to voting, number one, the mayor has to be pushing the envelope, making sure that we're affecting changes, not just where voting occurs, but where it doesn't, so that people will demonstrate that we care about one Houston, whether you show up in the polls or not, whether you're from affluent communities or not, but making sure that one Houston leaves no community behind. And so that's how you improve voting, but also making sure that there's policies, and I'd be happy to work with anyone here to increase participation in the process. Thank you.
We often talk about the right to vote and actually fight overseas and international wars to try and guarantee the right to vote for many individuals.